And kind of while we're getting started, you're going to see a little prompt come up. We're here to talk about some river careers. And so just love to get some thoughts around people's dream job. And it could be anything. It could be river related. It doesn't have to be. And while some ideas are coming in, I'm going to introduce myself and just, again, welcome you all to today's session on river careers, and in particular, looking at public agency pathways. My name is Angie Furman, and I'm the River Training Center Coordinator at River Management Society. I'm located in Southwestern Oregon, and I also help administer the River Studies and Leadership Certificate, if any of you out there are familiar with that. So you might have seen my face. It's good to see some familiar faces out there. And yeah, just want to highlight we got some good answers coming in. Some conservation, some around ecology, fishing, sustainability, see some river guides, rec planner, RTCA, for those who might not be aware, that's the River Trails and Conservation Association that's associated with the Park Service. I'm sure you're going to learn a little bit more about that. Awesome. Well, cool. Well, it seems like most everyone's in and connected to audio. So, and I appreciate everyone joining in here. But again, I just want to welcome you to today's session and remind you all that this is the first of 4 sessions that we're going to be doing, with our next one on October 11th. Each one, we're taking a different focus. So we're going to be looking at some policy and academic careers. We're also going to be looking at some nonprofit and private sector work. So encourage you to join all. I am recording this, and we are going to distribute it to all registrants afterwards. So whether you're here with us or not, or watching afterwards, you'll get a link. And also, you can catch this on the RMS YouTube channel, which I encourage you to check out. You'll see all of our new videos that we're coming out with, which is a couple each month. So encourage you to check that out. Again, if you're just joining, I also encourage you to join us on Mentimeter by going to menti.com and typing in this code that you see up here. So just real quick, for those who might not be familiar, River Management Society is a professional organization. We're a nonprofit, and we're really here to support those who study, protect, and work on North America's rivers. There's a lot of really cool things going on, lots of networking opportunities. And we do have a student membership that's a little bit cheaper. We have job postings. We have a newsletter that goes out bi-weekly with information on jobs and things going on rivers, grant opportunities, things like that. If you are working towards your River Studies and Leadership Certificate, you do get a free membership while you're doing that. So if you have more questions around that, you can always reach out to me or send me a message in the chat. Just a little bit about what's going to go on today. Here in a second, we're going to have the panelists introduce themselves so you can meet our panelists who all work in public agencies. We're going to have some discussion with them. Through Menti, you're going to be able to see that you can ask questions really at any time if you'd like. So if you have one in your mind, go ahead and ask it before you forget it. But we will have some time for Q&A at the end as well. And then I'll just do a little reminder about next session. So fake out first before we learn about the panelists. Just want to see where some people are joining from today, just to get a little bit better an idea of who you all are. And also, if you want to share anything in the chat or through the Menti, you're welcome to also share things there about yourself. So we'll be checking both Menti and the Zoom chat. All right, I see we got a nice little cluster coming in from Virginia. Well, we've got a nice spread. So we got some Northeasterners and some in the South, a couple over here in Colorado, and then I see over here in Montana, even some Oregon and Washington. Awesome. Ooh, Utah. This is great. This is a nice spread, kind of throughout the country. And again, if you'd like to share anything else about yourself or what you're studying, you can do that in the chat. And as we get into more discussion, maybe our presenters would like to know a little bit more about you. All right, now we're going to meet our panelists today. So first off, I'm going to ask Tangy to come off mute and introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Tangy Ekasi-Otu. I'm coming to you from Northern Virginia. I live about 15 minutes from the Forest Service Washington office in DC. So yeah, I work at the national scale with the Wilderness and the Wild and Scenic Rivers program. I'm a little bit partial to the Wild and Scenic Rivers program because it's afforded me the opportunity to work with cool partners like RMS and other groups. Especially love working with Angie on this series. And I myself utilized some of the internship programs and professional development opportunities to get the position that I work in today as a program specialist. So yeah, I'm really excited to hear what you guys are interested in, what your goals are, and just hopefully learn from some of the other panelists here as well. Anything else I should share, Angie?
That was perfect. Thanks, Tangy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Up next, Leigh. If Leigh is here, I know that she was running from another meeting. Otherwise, if not, you can have her introduce herself when she gets here. All right, so we'll go on. How about Tony?
Thanks, Angie. Hi, my name is Tony Mancuso. I am a state employee. I work for the Utah Department of Natural Resources as the Green in Colorado River Program Coordinator. We're pretty broad scope river shop. We do things from like stream access permitting and easements and rights of way, down to supervising a team of river rangers and implementing restoration projects and invasive species and habitat improvement. So everything that lands on the state in the Green Colorado River kind of comes to us, and we figure out how to handle it.
Thanks, Tony. All right, how about Darin?
Hello, everyone. Darin Martens, coming to you from Durango, Colorado. I work for the National Park Service and it's a technical service program for communities called RTCA, Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance. Actually, we worked on the Moab Town Ramp with Tony and a whole bunch of partners over there. A great project. So yeah, I'm a landscape architect. A little bit different. My program is not into river management per se, but we're kind of the behind the scenes river access, river restoration, any of those kind of technical services that's what my shop focuses on. However, parks, as we'll probably get into, do offer river management programs if they have a river they manage, just as the National Forest does, BLM, or a state office. So, but we'll get to that soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, Darin. And then just checking, Leigh, if you're able to join us.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
All right, sorry. I was having some technical difficulties. Anytime I tried to change my background, it would not let me and made me sign out and try again. So, hi, my name is Leigh Karp. I am the Bureau of Land Management's California Partnership Lead, where I work with volunteers, youth groups, NGOs, minority serving institutions, things like that. And I also happen to, not related to that, be the Pacific Chapter Vice President for the River Management Society. Didn't hear the question, so if there was more, let me know. Okay.
That was great. Thanks, Leigh. And thank you all presenters for being here. We're going to kind of go through some questions, make this conversational. And
Angie, you went on mute. You got it.
Thank you. All right. Well, yep, I was. So as I was saying to myself, thank you all the presenters for being here. And we're going to kind of go through some questions. And if anyone has any follow-up questions or comments that they'd like to share, feel free to put them into the chat or into the Menti. So my first question, I'm going to start off and ask Tony, if he's aware of any, or what are some common river-focused career progressions and trajectories that you know of within public agencies?
Yeah, that's a really good question because a lot of times regardless of your agency, the river program is kind of one of those like, man, I would love to work with those guys kind of, points of view. And I think I've noticed that a lot of folks that come to work for us have had a little bit of time in a prior program or prior experience with rivers or conservation. It's very common for people to have a few years of river guiding under their belt or a couple of seasons with a conservation corps or a wildland fire module. And this is kind of like a theme for a lot of the questions you guys, when I was thinking of them, it's very valuable working in the river field to have this sort of like, I'm a archaeologist who can boat, or I'm a this or that, and I bring these other skills that help like sustain me and keep me productive. And especially here in the Western states, like multiple nights in the field in a backcountry setting. And it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of cleverness to like build up a resume that's really competitive, that shows all these technical skills. I'm a hydrologist, I'm a fisheries biologist, and I can do that work in this kind of setting, which carries its own, set of skills. So a lot of times I really like pointing people at just doing a season or two as guiding, because it's like people say, everyone should have to work in a restaurant at least for a little bit in their life. It's just for the sake of personal growth, right? Being a river guide is great experience while you're in school because it's opposite the academic season and you're gaining skills and making money. And then that finishes up, you go back to school, you learn about natural resources, conservation. And it was most people I know in the West who work as river rangers were at least a guide for a couple of years.
Thanks, Tony. I don't know if any other panelists have anything to add on that before I move on to the next question. All right. So my next question is, so are there some specialized training programs or certifications that professionals in this field or in river related fields can pursue to enhance their skills and advance their careers? And I'm going to ask Darin to answer this one.
I have a great answer for you, Angie. I think the RMS, the River Studies Certificate Program, there are 12 colleges and universities now with that?
14 now.
14. See, I can't even keep up. Great program. Interestingly enough, Fort Lewis College here in Durango has that. And so still trying to work out how we're going to overlap and collaborate. But I think that's a great opportunity to jump into if you're in one of those colleges or universities. Look at that certificate program. My guess is you probably get to do some boating too. So that's not at all bad. The second thing I would answer that with is I'll just term it with the Forest, or not the Forest Service, the National Park Service. There's a fellows program, and I'm sure a lot of state and other federal agencies have similar things. It's essentially a 11-month long internship program. It is paid. In our program, RTCA, it's geared more towards projects. Like I was saying earlier with river access, maybe river restoration, a water trail, that kind of thing. So getting involved in a fellowship program that also then leads you, it gives you a foot in the door. If you want to pursue federal employment, that's a great opportunity after that fellowship.
Yeah, thanks for the certificate plug, but yeah, as you mentioned, Darin, there's a lot of great different types of fellowships and programs available. Another one I've heard of is like the virtual student federal service, which is an internship. I think that's virtually done. And Meredith asked what the name of the NPS fellowship program is. If you don't know off the top of your head, Darin, I can always put it in the chat.
So generically, it's just NPS fellowship program, and then different program areas like RTCA is kind of a department external program of its own. So we'll have our own fellowship program. So quite often, I think there may even be a database. It's kind of always in progress, it seems, and under construction. There was a website that had a lot of these listed. I think there were 11 positions this last year in RTCA across the country. So start by just searching that fellowship program, then it'll probably take you to those different programs.
All right. So my next question is kind of a two-parter. Are there opportunities for cross-disciplinary work within public agencies related to rivers? And I know Tony mentioned a little bit about that. Might ask like Tangy to expand on that. And then also, I guess the second part of my question is, how can early career professionals with diverse backgrounds or expertise contribute to the field and broaden their career opportunities?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. And I guess the reason that I like this question is because my title of my position, if I share that with a friend or an acquaintance, is typically asking like, oh, so are you on the river every day, or what river do you manage, etc. And so when I explain that we have a whole field level of the Forest Service as a federal land managing agency that, you know, includes folks with those river navigating skill sets, those public facing skill sets, those problem solving skill sets, safety, building capacity. That's only one level of this whole scheme regarding management, because folks who do the work on the ground are the ones who are really uncovering where we need innovation. And so we have other levels of work in the Forest Service in particular that includes the regional level. So the Forest Service has 8 regions. Sorry. But anyways, we've got several different regions. And so folks who work at that level, well, they work in an office each day. Certainly they have the opportunity to visit the field, but what do they do, you know, to contribute to management at that level? Well, a lot of what we need to support the field is with data. They need funding, they need communication tools, they need networks, training. There are all kinds of resources that we can provide to the field to enhance the work that's done right in the river corridor. And so in addition to that, at the national level where I work, some of the things that we leverage at this level to support the field is creative partnerships. We have a pulse on politics, upcoming designations, changes in the way communities view and utilize river corridors and rivers. We also have our thumb on policy. And so there's a variety of things that are required to steward rivers. And so I guess to be a bit more specific, when it comes to an interdisciplinary approach to river management, this means that at any given level, we could really use community organizers, communication skill sets, folks who can navigate partnerships, budgeting, and finance, folks that like data, who can create effective data summaries and communicate that information, folks that have an interest in policy, strategy, who have vision for the future and sort of want to chart a way forward. And so if you're utilizing those skill sets in any other field that intrigues you, and you take up a passion for rivers as a topic, and maybe you don't find yourself wanting to pursue some of the skill sets that are required to be boots on the ground, you can certainly transfer those skill sets to these other levels that really creates the network of support for the people who are out there stewarding the rivers on a daily basis. So yeah, I love like this conversation. So if you have other types of skill sets or feel like you come from sort of a different area academically, I love to creatively think about how you would be woven into this community of river management. And I guess the last thing I'll mention is that like people who are really passionate about rivers are very like, I think one thing that's really interesting is like sometimes we talk in a really technical way about rivers as a career, but like as a passion, people talk about that very like artistically. And so, you know, folks that have an artistic or creative background and can bring that voice and angle to characterizing these places are always heavily valued, because I think most people have such a deep and enduring appreciation for people connecting to rivers. And so that's just like a skill that can be woven in at any level. You know, if you're creative, if you're artistic, if you have a compelling story to invite other people into community around rivers, you can leverage that at any level of work, is what I would mention as well.
Thanks, Tangy. Leigh, I don't know if you have anything to add on this, or Tony as well.
Yeah, I'd say that a lot of the work that we do at the state office level, sometimes some of the field office levels, is like the planning side of things. You work on interdisciplinary teams. And so being able to be a part of those planning efforts that have relevance to the rivers, you're able to bring all of those cross-disciplinary things to the forefront. So I like that side of it as well.
Thanks, Leigh. And Tony, if you wanted to add anything, go ahead and jump in.
Just tack on one thing at the end that I think it's pretty uncommon to find someone working at any level in river management or access or planning that doesn't have some kind of multidisciplinary skill set. And it's usually more than just two. There can be three or more interest, skills, or periods of experience in a person's background that converge. And at that confluence is a career in river management. I was an arborist before I was a river manager, and I worked for a commercial river running before that. And taking your experience and piecing them together and figuring out a way to make it work in a career among rivers is kind of like, sorry, that was weird, kind of like what rivers need. Most people have some other kind of background as well.
I totally agree. I kind of had a zigzagging path as well to my position, so I totally relate to that. Moving on to another question, and Darin, I'm going to ask you to answer this one first. Can you discuss the role of mentorship and guidance in supporting the professional growth of individuals working in public agencies focused on river management?
Yeah, Angie, so my career has been primarily, I did work a little bit in county government, but it's been in the feds, both Park Service and Forest Service, now back to the Park Service. There are formal mentorship programs out there, but I think my real advice would be seek out the informal. There are so many people out there doing things, and just an example of this, when I was just getting into the Park Service, I was very interested in visual quality. I'm a landscape architect, right? And so I was participating, volunteering, like, oh, they needed this for a document, so I do these sketches. It was a little bit extra work, but that got the attention of some people, including the national landscape architect, who then started saying, oh, I heard you were interested in this document. I've been carrying this around for years. I'd get these preview copies of things. There'd be a note inside. It's still in here. Said, heard you might be interested in this. I think you did a couple of sketches kind of thing. And he'd drop off these things on my desk. So just showing that interest informally can actually be a great mentoring opportunity for you.
Yeah, I agree, Darin. And Leigh, I don't know if you'd also like to add in there.
Yeah, sure. One thing that I would say is when you're working as an intern or a seasonal or things like that, so often, a lot of times you give work to folks and they're so busy, they just say thank you and they move forward with it. So I think one way to kind of rope people into being your mentors is to make sure that they then send you back any additional changes that they made or how they incorporated what you did. Just asking for that feedback and that just like the growth of the document over time. That way you can frame it to them as, I'll be more helpful when I know what I've given you is helpful. So that's one way that I would try to encourage people to become your mentors is asking for that feedback.
Great point, Leigh. I think, just like almost taking that risk of asking people, to help you out can go a long way. You'll see I'm planting a little seed here, but at the end of today's session, we're going to have a little form for some interest around mentorship opportunities from you all and connecting you better to some of the RMS members that are out there that might have professions that line up with your interests. So if that's something that you might be interested in, it's not any formal commitment today. It's more of like an interest list as we work on kind of building out this program. So again, no commitment today. Yeah, and then I see some good stuff going on in the chat here with some additional opportunities for some internships, fellowships, and pipelines into different public agency pathways, and as well as some skills that Tangy's listed out. All right, so my next question, and I'm gonna start with Tangy on this one and ask, how do public agencies foster a culture of innovation and creativity in their teams? And I guess my second part is, or kind of a similar question, are there mechanisms in place to encourage new ideas and approaches to address the evolving challenges that we find on rivers and working with rivers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I think about a concrete example in regards to the Forest Service and how we're seeking to innovate and approach management of rivers creatively is through an internal, well, it's external as well. We've got a really cool group called Team Rapids, and it has that's a very convoluted acronym, so I'm not going to spell it out right now. But anyways, this consists of a bunch of river managers, folks that work in land management planning, and some of our partners as well. And it's essentially like a community of practice. But really what we do is we meet on a monthly basis to talk about emerging issues and barriers to managing rivers effectively. And then we invite speakers. Sometimes we'll just do an entire workshopping session on some of the philosophical questions that come up in regards to conservation and river management. And we'll have folks provide input on two sides of an issue to see if we can come up with best practices and move forward as a group. We do a lot of case studies in there. We invite groups that are just doing really unique work, you know, on the fringe of creative ideas for river management. A lot of that has to do with partners. And so that's one of the spaces that we try to use consistently to invite people into river management and planning to come up with cool ideas together. And then in addition to that, a couple other things and partners that the Forest Service engages with is the Next 100 Coalition. So there are a lot of different partner groups that work together in different capacities, but this one in particular, they work together to lobby and integrate more mandates to advance racial justice and access to the outdoors and public lands. And so they've sort of evolved over time, but we do have a formal partnership with them at the national level right now so that they can help improve some of the practices of the agency and hopefully get integrated in the way that we manage a lot of our programs. This ranges anywhere from piloting ideas around creating community gear libraries to make more community centers and tangible resources for people to access, to connect with public lands, to talking about recruitment and retention of new professionals. So we get a lot of creative ideas from the Next 100 Coalition. And then lastly, I would just shout out the coalition of partners that work to support the stewardship of wild and scenic rivers, in particular, the ones that have that national designation, which is the program that I work for with the Forest Service. And so, yeah, it's mainly through this really cool network of folks that we work with across the country internally, and then we work with our partners to be having frequent conversations and to do the problem solving that's needed every day.
Thanks, Tangy. And Tony, I don't know if you wanted to share your perspective on things too, which
Yeah, all right. Folks who've heard me talk before know that I really love a good soapbox. And so I'm just going to divert really quick into something that I think is important to say out loud. Generally, comparatively speaking, bureaucracies do not adopt innovation nearly as quickly as the private sector or academia or nonprofits or partnerships or anything like that. Government in America is made generally to be a little bit immovable because what is predictable and patient is easy to manage. And when folks like above our heads, the real big cheeses in government, look at new things, there's always a little bit of fear that it could create something unwieldy or inefficient or wasteful. And so innovation can be stifled when you work for the government. I spend a lot of time frustrated that we've got a good idea and it's not going anywhere. Or I explained that last month, or yada, 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 you know, take your pick. And I would advise that I think the very best civil servants have a level of patience and resolve proportional to the need for progress that they observe within their field, their jurisdiction, their agency. Because you may not know this, but we're facing like a real talent crisis in government. A lot of very talented people are leaving and going to places where progress gets adopted more quickly and the pay is a little bit better and it's just a little less clunky and slow. And when I'm interviewing new staff, something that's always at the forefront of my mind is this person gonna stick it out when we tell him no? Are they committed enough to their resource, to this resource that I manage, that they're going to be willing to deal with a pretty consistent stream of disappointment? And it's a long game. You know, we're managing natural resources. These are resources that have formed, and natural systems that have formed over thousands and thousands of years. And so it's important not to get discouraged when you spend a 30-year career and only move the needle a little bit, because that's a watershed volume of movement, right? So that's my take when we ask about like how do public agencies foster innovation under protest. And it's important that folks who are willing to protest be a part of that conversation. So if you want a good fight, come work for the government.
Thanks, Tony. And I also like what Tangy mentioned in the chat. So I'm just going to read it. Government agencies are like big ships, lots of resources, a level of consistency or predictability, but difficult to steer. Non-government groups are more agile and tend to struggle with consistency and resources. So in a way, need each other to stay afloat.
Can I jump in on that thought, Angie?
Yeah, go for it.
I think that's really the value that I've seen in my career with partnering with other organizations. So it's not just the state and the feds together, maybe with the county, but we also have nonprofit, special interest groups, public involved, because everyone can do something a little bit different, you know, in that equation to get a bigger either resource issue, you know, determined or designed or whatever it may be. So collaboration is key there.
Definitely. Most definitely. Kind of goes back to some of the skills that Tangy was mentioning earlier. And yeah.
And if I can jump in too, I would just make a pitch for people thinking about the BLM. I know we're not always everybody's first choice when they think about the governments. The National Park Service has a little bit more clout and aura, right? But when it comes to the BLM, we have almost like a interesting mindset in that you get a job and then it's up to you to try to figure out what that job is and how you're going to get stuff done. So we get to be really creative in how we manage. You get to build a lot of things. You know, it's not just like, here's your small little box that you're working in. It's like, here are all the things. What are you going to do to solve them? So it can be very creative and innovative. You know, we manage 12% of the US land mass. So the BLM's kind of where it's at. So I don't know. I would give it a thought.
Nice. I like the plug. All right, I'm gonna go on to the next question here. This has been some great discussion. And again, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to jot them down or put them in the chat. This one, actually, I'm gonna go back to you, Leigh, and ask, do you know of any specific programs or opportunities for students who want to pursue, or early career professionals who want to pursue working in a public agency? And I know we already kind of talked a little bit about this one, but here's a chance to say a little bit more for anyone who's just joined.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have many different programs. One of the ones that came up in the chat is the Public Land Corps hiring authority. So that program is, you can work through a bunch of different agencies. You do 640 hours of work, and 120 of those have to be on federal lands. Once you do those 640 hours, you can get a hiring authority that allows you to apply to jobs that are open to federal employees. So the agency, like jobs on USA Jobs, which are where all those jobs are open to the public, is like this amount. And if you are a federal employee, there's like this many. So by getting that hiring authority, you're able to apply to a much larger pool of jobs. And it can also help you get through that process and be recognized. I'm like a huge fan of trying to help people get through this process. I was an intern for 9.5 years before I got hired on. So I learned a lot about the different programs. So that's one, and I'm always trying to help people. If you're interested, let me know. I have like 100-page PowerPoint of like USA jobs and how to write your resumes and cover letters and stuff. So that's one, is the Public Land Corps Hiring Authority. So that has an age limit to it, and I want to say that's 30. Sorry, I should be able to quote this off the top of my head, but I've been a little distracted. The other one that I highly recommend is the Direct Hire Authority Resource Assistant Internship Program. The DHA program is what it's often referred to, DHA RAI. Those internships are like the gold standard of hiring authorities that you can get name drop from. So if you're doing an internship with a specific agency and it's a DHA internship, you have to be a student or a recent grad. They can literally name drop you and say, we want to hire this person. So that's one program that I'd highly recommend. So when you're looking for different internships, those are ones that I would ask. Is this, specifically look for DHA internships, or specifically look for Public Land Corps jobs and ask them, like, is this something that I would earn that Public Land Corps hiring authority for, or the DHA hiring authority? Other ones are the public PMF, the Public Management Fellow positions. Those are specifically for people that either have a master's degree or a JD or some other advanced degree that are interested into getting to the federal government. And that kind of skyrockets you straight into upper leadership positions. So that's another one. We also have Pathways internship programs that basically you come in and you're working as a federal employee, as a Pathways intern, and there's many different requirements, but as you finish your degrees and as internships, you can be converted into permanent federal careers. So there's plenty more, but I just wanted to highlight at least those 4 different programs. So if anyone else wants to hop in, that's great.
And I saw Tangy just put a few in the chat. I don't know if you'd like to say a few words about those, Tangy. That'd be cool.
Yeah, Leigh just highlighted the Resource Assistance Program, which also provides positions with the Forest Service, and the Presidential Management Fellows Program as well. So I linked to those, and just 2 additional notes for detail. Angie previously mentioned the Virtual Student Federal Service program. That's a program that's hosted by the state and is very informal, and that's because it's really accessible for students. So this internship is less of like a formal workflow or position, and I would say it's almost more like a chance to engage a government agency and learn what they really work on and do a meaningful project alongside them at a pace that's appropriate for a full-time student. And so some students have leveraged this program to arrange an informal agreement with the government agency staff and to commit to about like 10 hours a week, sometimes less, to complete a meaningful project over the course of a school year, and to use that as a way to really get oriented with like, what do you guys actually do? What do you guys really do? What's on your work plan for the year? And gain that familiarity and build those relationships. Sometimes that can be a nice launching pad to take a look at the fellowships that are available with the Resource Assistance Program, as Leigh mentioned, because that's where you're getting paid. So I think some of the partners offer health insurance, and you get that incredible hiring authority at the conclusion. It's really supposed to be that launching pad into a permanent position. And so the last thing I will plug regarding the Resource Assistance Program is how I was able to obtain the position I have with the Forest Service. The partner that helped to fund and host my position was Hispanic Access Foundation, and there are a variety of other partners that help to provide the sort of like administrative support. And they really keep expanding the things they do to stay connected with students who are engaging the program, but they're there to help onboard you, make sure you have the things you need while you meet your supervisor and your team and get going in your position. And so if you guys have specific questions about that program, I still work with a lot of students who are a part of it right now or who have transitioned in a number of different contexts to permanent positions with federal agencies. And so if you want to know anything more specific about it, please reach out to me.
Thanks, Tangy and Tony or Darin, if you want to hop in, feel free.
I think Darin put it in the chat a little while ago. And I don't have any specific one to point folks toward, but the AmeriCorps Youth Conservation Corps programs really bring a lot to the table as far as getting people prepared specifically for like the field work and operational and the boots on the ground kind of careers. And a person can spend a 30-year career and stay in the field if they want to. There's all kinds of work and leadership and roles in field work. And a big hurdle we have in recruitment is that training is really expensive. And I mean like the technical kinds of training that you get through Conservation Corps programs, like chainsaw operation or fire engine operation or communicating with helicopters or operating SAR scenes. Those kinds of things and those courses are rare, expensive to sponsor, and don't even necessarily happen every single year. But youth conservation corps oftentimes will train people up just to that foundational level, nothing too advanced, but like just the basics. And so a person who can come and say, I've spent 1 or 2 seasons with a youth conservation corps, and you're not going to have to send me to the chainsaw operator course or the UTV operator course or any of those things. I've already got all those little cards that I keep in like my notebook. That's a huge sell, because sometimes we need to have a person with those qualifications, and that opportunity, that educational opportunity, isn't coming to Eastern Utah this year, right? So yeah, Leigh said the same thing, all of that stuff. Woofer, the youth corps are extremely useful. There's an education award because it's an AmeriCorps program, and I've hired folks out of those programs who did time with the Conservation Corps and then moved on and did things. Another kind of internship program is called the Individual Placement Program, which is kind of like a direct hire authority for a paid internship. I talk to the AmeriCorps coordinator in my state, and I say, I have, this much money. I need to hire someone who can perform this very focused task for me this year. We have a big project. I need, a person at this boat ramp for this year. And that individual placement is a great way to cut through some red tape, and get like directly injected into a program that way. Yeah.
All great points. Like, I know personally for me, I got my woofer, my wilderness first responder, just because I was doing adventures outside, and that opened up a lot of opportunities for me to become a guide. And yeah, just depending on which way people want to take their river career, lots of different opportunities out there. And Darin, I know you already provided some information about internships and pathways, and so feel free to jump in if you have anything else to share. Otherwise, go ahead.
There's a lot of them in the chat, so make sure, scroll back through the chat. There's all kinds of different ideas in here. So
yeah, and what I'll do is afterwards, I'll have the chat saved, and what I'll do is I will put it in the description on the video on YouTube, so you can have access to these links again. So if you didn't save them, don't worry. We will have those saved for you. And I know we're running down towards the end of our time. My last question is on advice that you would give to students or early career professionals who want to pursue long-term careers in public agencies. I'm going to give you a minute to kind of think about that as panelists and see if you can put it into a few sentences. And while you're thinking of that, I just want to kind of remind people, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the Mentimeter or in the chat. We'll try to get to them. I think most of the panelists here would be okay sharing their emails. So if you do have any direct follow-up questions for some of the different hiring pathways that were mentioned, you can reach out to them. I also wanted to get this up in front of folks, this mentorship interest form, just in case that is something of interest to you. So just wanted to have something else showing besides the advice question. And so I guess go back to that. What piece of advice do you have? I'm going to go ahead and start with Tangy.
Okay, let's see, a couple of sentences. So I would say it's like take an inventory of what's going on in this field to figure out where you can help in a unique capacity. I think sometimes when you're early career, you're more focused on like what you hope your rhythm of work is going to look like or what sounds fun. And those things are all really important. But until you get a lay of the land and say, like, where are we at a regional, state, national scale regarding rivers and conservation? Who's out there? What questions are they wrestling with right now? Until you kind of know where we're at and take a pulse and get to build those relationships, it's going to be hard to chart a long-term sort of vision for what you want to contribute. So the more you can learn about like, where is the field now? What are the urgent questions? And give yourself an opportunity to think about how you can uniquely plug into that. I think it's important to take the time to do that and have sort of like a team mindset. Because again, we all talk about sort of it's a network. It's just a huge network of folks trying to figure things out, each with different resources and tools. So yeah, if you want to stick around, make sure you know what's needed and what people are looking for in this field.
Thanks, Tangy. All right, how about Tony?
I would say, well, what's helped me keep my sanity? I've been, I've been here. This is my 7th year, so not a very long time, but keeping your organizational skills very sharp is a skill that I had to learn on the fly after I started doing this. And going back to the multidisciplinary thread of the conversation we were having earlier, careers in river management kind of get things thrown at them from all directions because rivers flow through and across landscapes, and there's partnerships and political boundaries and all kinds of different things. There's not a single thing that a natural resource agency does that doesn't have a component that involves a river to it somewhere. Lands and realty, recreation, minerals, the dirty word, they're all involving rivers somehow. Rivers are everywhere. So learning how to compartmentalize your work, like what Tangy said, learning like where the most help is needed or where there are deficiencies and where you think you can be useful. But getting those things compartmentalized and organized and you know, in a very myopic scale of organization. If you don't have all of your certifications and your qualifications like organized and looking professional, and you know that they're up to date and nothing's expired, and keep a trip log of the work that you've done on rivers, the river trips that you've gone on, a complete application packet. And I know USA Jobs has got its own set of rules, so we got to like kind of fit into that. But when I like my professional portfolio includes things where I can look back and say like, okay, yeah, in 2016, I did see that section of the river in really low water, and things that'll help me remember all crap that comes flying my way. Just learning those organizational skills is really kind of necessary because you never know what's going to happen next.
Thanks, Tony. How about Darin?
I'm looking at Leigh's comment in the chat. That's exactly where I was going to go. Angie, you and Tony both mentioned this, a career with zigzags. None of us, I don't think, gets that ultimate job first day out of college. It's a progression. So you're building on each job that you have. You learn something, and you may not even know it at the time, but it's going to contribute to that next job and that ultimately where you want to go. So don't be afraid to take a job, learn something, and then learn from it. Keep participating. Professional associations, just keep plugging RMS today. But that's a great way to see what's going on out there in the world. And basically, you're kind of building your resume by participating in all that.
Yeah, great plug. We do have our next river management symposium happening in Southern Oregon, actually not too far from where I'm at, or the Rogue River. And that'll be in April of 2025. It's an opportunity for students to come and present, either do a presentation of their work. We have poster presentation opportunities. It's awesome networking. At our last symposium in February, I know a few students who got direct job offers. So awesome networking opportunity. And then Leigh, I saw that you put some advice in the chat. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything else.
I was surprised at how much I love living in Winnemucca, Nevada. So, I'd definitely be willing to move around, take jobs if they're offered. Why not? You might learn something, you might love it. If not, a lot of times they don't last forever. So you can try a bunch of different things.
Yep. And I see Rebecca asked, did I say April 25th? I think it's going to be April 28th. I have to look back at the exact date here. But I believe it's the last week of April in 2025. So whatever day that is, my calendar just decided to totally reload. So I'll have more information about it. And then again, just a friendly reminder, I know we've hit our time today. We'll be meeting again October 11th. We're going to have some different panelists who are going to be talking about some different careers regarding involving policy and research, though, as you've seen from today's panelists, a lot of the work out there related to rivers is really interdisciplinary. And a lot of these projects that happen involve people from all these different careers. So again, thank you all for attending. And I hope to see you there. And there's going to be a little follow-up survey when you leave Zoom. Would really love to hear your feedback on this session today. And if you have any ideas what would be more helpful, would love to hear it. And just another huge thank you all for joining, and a huge thank you to our panelists for sharing with us today.
Thanks for having us, Angie.
Yeah, thanks, Angie.
It was good to see you all. Thanks for showing up, guys.
Yeah, good to see you all.